The G League Ignite was a team, for any of you guys listening who don't know, it was a team created for guys to leave high school and instead of going to college, they could play in the G League for a special team where they could get mentored by veteran players. They would make $500,000 a year. They finished this season 2-29, and the NBA has made the decision to shut that team down. I mean, they never really got a big crowd for their games. They never really had a top. I don't think their offense or defense was in the top half of the league the entire time they existed. The players, the notable players who have come out of there, Jonathan Kuminga, Jalen Green, um, anyone else springs to mind?
Scoot Henderson.
Scoot Henderson.
Yeah, Kuminga.
You mentioned he mentioned Kuminga, but
Yeah,
Scoot Henderson
Kuminga,
last
Scoot
year.
Henderson. They've had a couple guys come out of there.
Yeah,
Are you guys
projected a few guys that are on the team this year that will be, first round picks as well.
Are you guys surprised at this decision? What has been your make of the G League Ignite experiment?
I'm not totally surprised. I mean, you alluded a little bit in your intro in terms of it's not been a profitable venture for the NBA. I'm sure it's a large line item expense for the league at large. While there was definitely what I thought some very good benefits to it, seeing young players be able to play alongside, professional players, older players, and then compete against older guys, learn from former NBA coaches and players. So there was some value in that. In talking to people around the league, though, here recently, when this announcement came out, a number of people are pointing to one of the league's talking points, and that is the introduction of NIL to collegiate basketball now, that provides an economic avenue for top high school players now to be able to earn money by playing collegiately, and therefore the league didn't feel like they wanted to be in that kind of a competition for those services economically. And I'll make one last point about it, and BJ, and being an agent, will remember this and know this well. Another reason why they wanted to start this here stateside was because there were a few players that left the United States after their high school careers to go play, to sit out, quote unquote, sit out a year before going to the NBA. And that was Emmanuel Mudiay, who I know BJ represented, as well as Brandon Jennings. And they both were lottery picks. And they, Brandon, I think, played in Italy, and Emmanuel, if I'm not mistaken, he went to China, right, BJ?
The Guangdong Tigers.
Yeah, right. And so there was just a prevailing thought, why are American kids having to go that far, make that type of personal adjustment, let alone basketball adjustment, when we could try to develop them here stateside?
And it does make sense. I mean, I used to tell people here that if you want the league in the UK to grow, you should start recruiting all these top high school guys. But they never listen. Right. And Australia, funnily enough, did. They got LaMelo Ball. They've had a whole bunch of players now come through their system. BJ, what are your thoughts on, you obviously love scouting players, right? So
yes.
You were working with Emmanuel Mudiay. How do you, from a scouting perspective, look at a player who's playing in the G League, or a player who's playing in college, or a player who's playing overseas? How can you judge the difference between the levels at which they're playing?
Well, first, when, just in full transparency, when Emmanuel Mudiay made that decision, I was not working with him when he graduated high school to go over to China. I feel very strongly about this topic. As Scott know and people in the business, I spend a lot of my time, even to this day, on looking at the environments where young people have an opportunity to really get an opportunity to understand the game. People work on the game, people do all these moves, so forth and so on, but those aren't the fundamentals of the game. There's only one thing that you can actually learn about the sport, which we call basketball, and that's the fundamental base. Now, all of the moves and things, that's kind of a new phenomenon, the double step back, all of these things that people do. However, I consider myself a purist to the game, right? It's about the game. It's not about me. It's not about what I know. It's not about I know more than other people. It's about what is the core of the game itself. And the game is about the fundamentals and how the game will be played. There's limitations to what you can and can't do and move in this earthly realm, if you will. There's only so many things you can do. You can only jump so high. You can only run so fast. You can only do so many things. However, the fundamentals of the game is the one thing that seems to be in a transition right now because of the way we play. We're in an age of highlights. We're in an age of everyone's trying to develop. Well, it's very hard. If we want a better student, you have to have a better teacher. Okay. Right now, we are in an age where, without questioning, the best teachers of the game are in Europe right now. That's a fact. So all of these other things that we're talking about, it's about the teachers. If we want a better student, we have to have better teachers. And right now, you can look at the game, and we can put money, and Scott, said it. The NBA can put money here in the G League. We can put money in all these different leagues. However, the biggest disappointment about all of this is, what are the requirements to be able to teach the game? That's when you look around, when I came into this business, I had Hall of Fame coaches every step of the way, whether it was George Raveling, Tom Davis, Phil Jackson, Chuck Daly, da-da-da. Unfortunately, and I think I could say this, but I'm not trying to be critical of anyone, but now you're looking at the teachers of the game, and you're saying, okay, there's no wonder the way the game looks there's no wonder why the game looks the way it looks right now. Mm-hmm. Because we see there has been a huge drop-off in the teaching aspects of the game of basketball. Not who has the best play calls, not who is he's a coach. What is he? A player-friendly coach. Not this guy is all these terms that you hear, this guy has whatever the case may be. He's not he may not be, some of these coaches may not have been the best as far as media friendly, but these guys understood the fundamental core of the game itself. That's been the biggest drop-off that I've seen. So right now, we're in an age, as far as basketball, especially at the amateur level, where we're going to have to demand a level of excellence at that level in order to raise the buoyancy or the water or raise the level of play that will eventually, what we're talking about, which is professional basketball. Now, the one thing I will give a positive check to is, at least we're trying things, right? This G League thing, check. Overtime elite, check. Academies that you're seeing pop up all around, check. However, now collegiate basketball, at least they've changed something. You have these transfer portals and NIL deals, and at least we're trying different things. Players are trying, some go to Europe, some go to China, some went to Australia, as you mentioned. At least we're trying. However, it's one thing that we can all say, there's gaps in all of them. Even the European model, there's gaps in all of them. So I think the basketball minds, or the people who care about the game, this gives us an opportunity now to sit down to try to figure out what's going to improve the game. Not improve the business, but improve the game. Okay. And if we can improve the game, then all of the other things in which we all have benefited because of, right, which is the business, will naturally take care of itself. So if there's anything that I'm going to challenge everyone to do, is let's sit down collectively to improve the game of basketball. The game that we love, not the game that we've all had an opportunity to live and do the business of. We've all done that, right? And we've all, myself, Scott, here, we're doing this podcast, all benefited from the game itself. However, what are we doing to improve the game? When is the last time we've done something to improve the game? So that's my only argument, is now is an opportunity, because the game is at a crossroad. we can see right now we don't have a venue in which our young players can come through to say, well, this is the road to becoming, or at least having an opportunity to become a great player. Now it's just kind of a toss-up. And how many talented players have we seen where we have said the following: coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We've said that we're saying that more now than this guy is going to be a player.
Because now I think people don't realize, as great it is saying all these guys who were picked in the end of the draft, the second round of the draft, how amazing they are. The unspoken part of that sentence is because they're so great, the guys picked at the top of the draft. Now, what's the point in having one of these really high draft picks if you're going to be able to find a guy in the second round where you're going to get better production out of instead of the big name?
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah, no, I get what you were going. I wanted to go back to, a couple of things that BJ was talking about, and I thought he made some tremendous points. One thing that I've always said, we must address and take care of the basketball business first in order for the business of basketball to be really successful. And I think that's where we're at right now. What you're talking about, BJ, we got to address this basketball business. That means getting back to the fundamental base. You talked about the teaching of the game. See, I maintain we've got to go back, and especially over here in the United States, and you see it a little more over in Europe and in Australia and those places. These academies for young people, and I'm talking about going back to starting at 10, 11, and 12, where you're developing fundamental habits of the game. See, what's happening now over here in the United States, a lot of those youngsters at that age are working on, like BJ talks about, double step backs and all these individual moves.
Everyone wants the highlight for the TikTok.
Versus really understanding, okay, what's shell drill? What are the defensive principles? And how do I feed the post? Or how do I pivot? How do I handle the basketball? All of the fundamental things that we all grew up with. And what happened was, years ago, we learned that at a young age. Then you became in high school, you were being taught that all over again, but you were going against a higher level of player and athlete. You moved on to college, same thing. The consistency of message and teaching of the fundamentals was there. Now, BJ used the word gaps. There are a lot of gaps and spaces there. So now you're getting a tremendous athlete that's coming, to a G League Ignite or to a college campus, but it's fundamental base for the game is not as solid and good as it was years ago. And that's where, to me, we got to go back and fill in that gap and start getting the right type of teachers and people who can teach the game and because kids will follow what it was put in front of them. So I think that's where we really have to go right now to start that process and then push everybody along through the system, getting consistent messaging, consistent fundamental coaching. And then I think you'll see an overall greater quality of basketball.
Yeah, I agree with what you both are saying. Just real quick before we move on to the next topic, Scott, I wanted your perspective from a front office point of view. When you were evaluating these guys to pick in the draft, how do you compare the guys who are playing in the G League to the guys who play in college to the guys who are playing internationally? Because college, you're playing against people your same age, the same kind of body build. Internationally, you're playing against grown men, and then the G League, you're playing is kind of inconsistent. So how do you kind of level out and compare the three?
Well, I'm going to take you behind the curtain real quick and how I approach it. And I think a number of teams look at scouting this way and evaluating prospects through three prisms: eyes, ears, and numbers. Eyes, okay, that entails going out to scout guys, practicing, working out, playing games, studying, hours of film to see, to come up with an evaluation of what this prospect is strong and weak at. The ears, that is all of the intel gathering. and that comes from, interviewing, coaches, peers, if it's a college player, going back to his high school coaches and peers, talking to a number of people who this player has competed against to start to get a perspective of who the guy is as a competitor and as a person. And then also when you get the opportunity to interview these guys, when through the pre-draft process, when they come and work out for you, or you meet with them at the draft combine, to get to know the person, that was always huge for me, because you've heard me say this before. You're not just getting the talent and skill level coming through the door, you're getting the person, and they're not mutually exclusive. They're coming together. And then the third part I mentioned, the numbers, and that's the analytic part of it. And, that is important, because I always utilize that to either confirm or not confirm what I'm seeing or what our group is seeing on this prospect. And you talk about comparing different leagues and the like, so for example, I go back a few years, you take a guy like Ja Morant when he was coming out of Murray State. What I would do then is look at his numbers coming out of Murray State and then compare him to other top guards, who had come out in the draft in previous years, say a Derrick Rose or Chris Paul or, Russell Westbrook, and see how those numbers compared, and try to see, can you predict him kind of, going into a similar space like that? And then, if you look at the European players, you watch a guy coming out of Europe, who's their minutes a lot of times a lot lower, so you may you want to compare, this group of international players are coming out this year to maybe look, to a Luka Doncic when he was coming out, and kind of compare the numbers at the same stage. So a lot goes into it. And that was a real quick and brief tutorial of it, but just wanted to give our listeners kind of a broad overview of just kind of how you want to compare what you're seeing and what's going on with these players today, and compare them against some guys who've gone on to have success in the NBA, and what they were like when they were coming out of either college or the European game or G League at night.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we'll talk more about it towards the NBA draft.